building the business turns you into a different kind of human being.
Realize that failure is a part of the journey.
I think there's hope out there for all of us.
They say procrastination be the assassination of destinations. That's why we out here grinding with no association with haters and them other crabs trying to put us down. Pest badges in the house, boy, don't clown. Just keep your eyes on the prize, ain't no giving up. You can do whatever you dream of. Just keep your eyes on the prize, ain't no giving up.
Welcome back to another episode of Pest Control Millionaire. I have someone very special on the podcast today. Really excited about this. Actually, our friend Travis put this together. But we have a pretty big player in our industry, which is really cool. We don't have people that sell products every day on here. It usually just kind of goes against what I believe in. Like I don't pitch people my people products, but I love what you guys are doing. I love the innovation that you guys are bringing to the pest control industry. And Ethan Vickery, welcome to the podcast, man. How's it going?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
It's pretty cool. Obviously, you're the owner, founder of VM Products, and you have a lot going on. But I always start the podcast out the same exact way because I just love to see what people's backgrounds were back in the day, like where they came from, what their parents were like, what you were as a young adult, and what that turning point was for you to go from being, a young kid, whatever that may be, into an entrepreneur. I love the journey. I love the come up. We all go through a lot of struggles. But if you and I are sophomore or junior in high school, who's Ethan then?
Oh boy, I don't think anybody really wants to know.
I think we do.
I don't know. I told my story at Bug Bucks. Alan had asked me, to talk about failure, and so failure for me is kind of a learned event. It's the way that my parents did things. My parents were divorced, but both my mom and my stepdad and my dad and my grandparents, they were very methodical post World War, right? Like they had their steps, they had the way they did everything. And we owned my stepdad owned plumbing, heating, and air conditioning company. Also built apartments too as well. And then my dad had a manufacturing company. And then my grandfather on my mom's side, who was really, really influential in my life, he was actually president of a university and a big research guy all over the globe. He'd consulted for like 55 different countries over the course of his career. So, even though as I kind of got into my teenage years, nefarious activities, would happen. Always kind of went back to the way I was raised, steps, one step at a time, how do you build something? And so when I got into high school, when I was in junior high, one of my buddies, this guy named Eric Hunter, we did something we weren't supposed to do, and his dad took upon himself to say, like, you guys have to be doing something besides just being on your BMXs. I don't know if anybody remembers a BMX, but like,
Man, I love my BMX bikes.
Yeah, everybody had that, right?
We did.
So you rode that thing as fast as you could with one gear, as far as you could go. So he said, you guys are gonna have to make some money. We're like 7th, 8th grade.
I had like a Diamondback back in the day.
Yeah, it was a Diamondback. Yeah, it was
Yes,
100% Diamondback.
awesome.
That's what you had to have. So had to have the Diamondback. And so he went to the hardware store and he bought stencils and paint. And I remember we came in and it was all sitting on the table, and both Eric and I had this stunned look on our face, like we had no idea what was about to happen. And so he sold life insurance, and his name was Dick, and he sold life insurance, and he was a great guy. Still is a great guy. And he said, listen, you guys are going to go paint curbs. And he told us exactly what we were going to do, what we were going to charge. And he said, you're not going to get in trouble. You're going to paint curbs. And so we started painting curbs. And it's kind of how I started my door-to-door sales career, right? We literally just knocked on doors, Lubbock, Texas. Back then, all the doors had the glass door first, that had a lock on it. So you had to get past that
Storm
barrier,
door,
right?
yeah.
You had the storm door. So you had to get past that barrier. And we started selling curbs, and we would paint the curbs, your address on the curb, and we had three different options. We would just paint the number, and that was in white and black, or we would paint the number and reverse it out and put Texas Tech in red. And then we had these glow beads, which I don't know how really effective they were, but they were another dollar. So we could be $3, $4, $5. And so we started, and lo and behold, man, we sold some curbs, and then all of a sudden there's some money in our pocket, and and of course we had to, pay for the materials. But at the time, spray paint was like 39 cents a can or something. Like, it was very affordable. And so, that kind of shaped how I started doing things from then on. Like, that was like, my family always worked, so I'd be on job sites. I understood how to work, right? And I understood the service business. But that was my first like introduction into, hey, provide a valuable service, get paid, and have profit. And so that just stuck with me, stuck with Eric, actually. Eric today owns one of the largest roofing companies in America. He's done, really, really well. Kind of the same thing, just, taking his sales experience and, both of us having a very, a will to win, a will to, get something done. He did in roofing, I did in pest control. And I'm sure the door-to-door part of it is why he was successful, right? Like, I mean, selling roofs, very similar to what we were doing when we were painting curbs. So when I got into high school, I had a lot of great friends. Still have some of those friends today from elementary school, high school, and so had a lot of fun. We played sports and enjoyed that, and we one of the things actually in Lubbock. Lubbock is obviously known for, the Panhandle is a big, agricultural area, oil and gas area, Texas Tech's there in Lubbock. And but there was a family there, the Maloof family, that had a really high-end clothing store. And so with the university, there was always a lot of style. And so in high school, my buddies and I, kind of during that time, the polos and the Gerbeau jeans and the belt loops and the bomber jackets. And so, man, we were just kind of what you see, on my social media. If I'm looking at Instagram, it'll show pictures of, high school kids graduating in 1991. And that's pretty much what it was. Just, I had gratefully an all-American, life as far as, friends and family, and, going skiing in Colorado and trying to get a beach trip in the summer. My parents did a great job of, getting us out there and enjoying life. And so it was good. And then, my mom and my grandparents and my dad and all said, you got to go to college. So then I graduated from high school and went to college.
Hold up, quick pause. If you're on a pest control company or fertilization weed control company, you're not in our Facebook group, you're choosing the harder path. Every operator that's in there is skipping years of mistakes because people are actually sharing what's working right now. So stop trying to brute force your way through growth alone. Search Pest Control Millionaires on Facebook or click the link below. And now let's get back to it. Yeah, it's pretty awesome that you were surrounded by a bunch of entrepreneurs at an early age that forced you, like, from being in trouble to go do something productive. That's really cool.
100%. Like, it was, for every action, there's a reaction. And I think that's, if you think back on just, the American journey, the constitutional journey, the Magna Carta journey, like everything happens from, something that was learned. And, that's the way I approach everything I do every day, is that what will make us fail will make us succeed. And so, the mistakes that we make are not necessarily permanent, as long as, they're obviously minor mistakes. And then from those mistakes, you learn how to make yourself, more formidable, make yourself more sharpened, so to speak. And so having those people in my life and around my life as a young person really shaped how I approached everything that I've done, at VM and other places too as well. So
I love that. So you said from there you transitioned to college. I think you said your grandpa was a professor. Do you end up going to his college, or where do you go from there?
No, he was president of Mexico State University in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and I had grown up in Lubbock, and my stepdad had, like I said, they had also built apartments, and that business had gotten quite big. So my mom and my stepdad had moved to Arlington, Texas, and so I went to Texas Tech my first year, and I guess this is part of my story. So, I really did not pay attention to the part of college that you're supposed to pay attention to, which is, go to class, get good grades. Lubbock's a fruitful environment for having fun. And so I chose to have a little too much fun. And so had fun. Still,
Those
like, I
girls
love
are the
being
distraction.
yeah, well, there's a whole lot of distractions, and that's
There
one of
is
them
in
for
college,
sure.
for sure.
So I ended up leaving Lubbock and went to University of Texas in Arlington, and I met some phenomenal people. I joined a fraternity, and I met some great guys, of which I'm still really good friends with today. Three or four of them live within a mile from where I live today, and we see each other on a very regular basis. And so that ended up kind of the way it was supposed to. Made great friends, and that shaped my younger years in manufacturing and excellence, and framing my mind on how I wanted to start my life and my career. And so it was a good experience.
Yeah. So is that where you say that your failure came in, that part?
Yeah, I'd say so. I had a little too much fun. One of me and one of my that you hear the theme here, right? Of having too much fun. So one of my fraternity brothers, we found ourselves having a little too much fun as far as just doing the fraternity thing and Greek life, and there's always something fun in Greek life. And so we ended up I ended up my parents were really adamant that I started working and paying my own bills, and learning how to take care of myself. So I ended up getting a job working for Bose Music Speaker Systems when I was in college, and that was just a complete gift, man. I was about halfway through school. I was 2 years into it, a little over 2 years, and they had their music theaters that they had put all over the country to
You're
take,
awesome.
yeah, and sell the Acoustimass systems. If ever anybody ever went to one of those theaters, there would be, I think True Lies was with Arnold Schwarzenegger was the movie that we used the most, and you get the Dolby surround sound, and you thought it was really big speakers, and then you would take the speakers off the wall, um, and then, it was the Acoustimass 12 system, and it was a really good job at the time, extremely good job. I mean, I was looking back on it and what I was making in 1994. It was an exceptional part time job in college. Well, it was a $2,000 music system, and I guess I didn't realize that was a lot of money to everybody that was walking into that theater. A lot of the people that walk in that theater, and I went to work every day to sell X amount. We had a commission plan that scaled up. The more you sold, the bigger the number was, retroed back to, system one. And so the goal was always to get to that number. And actually, through, not studying and not taking school seriously enough, through that time, I actually met a guy that I'm still friends with today. His name's James Rogers, and he had a very successful business, and he had bought several systems, a dozen plus systems that were for clients and friends, etc. And I remember I asked him one day, he came in 3 or 4 times. I'm like, hey, can you teach me what you know? And it's he goes, well, what's your schedule? And I said, well, I have Tuesday afternoons where I have nothing on, no school, no work. And he said, well, come in on Tuesdays. And so I started going into his office on Tuesdays. It was close to the college, and he just let me sit there and learn. And he had, I think at the time, he had 400 nurse practitioners working for him, or nurses working for him, and he was managing nursing home, billing. He had a whole, he had multiple lines of services in healthcare, and I sat and learned and listened to attorneys, listened to him, listened to P&L conversations, and that really kickstarted my desire to be an entrepreneur. Like, I wanted to sit in his chair. Like, he had a big office. This is in the 90s, and offices are still a thing today. But like, if you didn't have a gigantic office in the 90s, then you weren't successful, right? So he had this big office, and I would sit on a chair next to the desk, and I just thought to myself, man, I got to figure out how to be in that desk someday. And so those failures, I never give up, and I still never give up. And so those failures ultimately were the catalyst for having to sit back and think about what's my life. My dad used to always tell me, live your movie. And it took me a long time when I was younger to really get a handle on what that actually meant. And so he started my teenage years, when you start thinking about life and, what's life going to be. And sometimes kids do and sometimes they don't. Right. And so, but my dad wanted to make sure that I thought about how I wanted my life to be. And so as I, continued into, high school, college, and he would keep saying, live your movie. I think about that office with James Rogers and sitting there, I was thinking about, what do I want my movie to be? What do I want my life to be? And I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I wanted to be a successful entrepreneur. And so that really was a big part of how I approached life, going into my early 20s and thinking about how I was going to, tackle this thing called life, which is, not the easiest thing to do, as we all know.
Absolutely. When you were at that age and you looking at your movie, are you living your movie today?
100%. Yeah, without question. And what's really interesting is through mentorship, and so James really mentored me. And what I learned through mentorship is a gift that must be
Absolutely.
re-given, right? So as people mentor you, you have to mentor others. And so I take that very seriously. So I've met, a dozen high school kids, college kids, more than that, I've mentored. And I stick with kind of what I've learned. I stick with my dad's thought process of live your movie. And in that, I've kind of come up with my own way to mentor and also think about my life too as well. And so, I've been, in mentoring situations where they're 18 or 19 or 20, and you ask the question, what's your movie? And they, there's always this kind of look on their face of like, what do you mean, what's my movie? And I said, it's real simple. Like, you want a life, right? You've already identified, like, hey, I want to be married, I want to have 2 kids, I want to live in this house. I love my dad's F-250. Like, I love a Yukon. I'm a sports car person. I want to live, in this part of town, or I want to live in this part of the country. And my encouragement always is to back end, how do you get to that point? Like, each one of these things has, some sort of financial commitment that you're going to have to make enough money to pay for that. I always ask the question, what's your spiritual life? What kind of friends do you want to have? Like, think through that process. How do you see that week? And I encourage them to write it down, get a binder and write it down, write your movie down. And it's a business plan, right? I mean, when you think about businesses, if you go ask for money, when I asked Danny Myers, the M&VM, for money, I had a business plan that 40 pages of what I thought it was going to take to get VM off the ground. And, it's funny, as people, we typically don't do that in our own lives. And so I just, I continue to, think about what my movie is, as I go forward. I'm 53. So when you're 53, and I have an 11th grader next year. So that part of my life is nearing an end. And, I've got to think through what's the movie for the rest of my life. And so, but without question, I've lived my movie, and
I
I'm
love
grateful
that.
for that.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
So you're sitting back in
Have
James'
you lived your
office.
movie? Have you
I'm
lived your
living it.
movie?
I'm living it. Currently living
Good.
it, but also probably similar to you. Like, I feel like I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
And I mentor a bunch of young kids. We got 150 some plus kids that, 18, 19-year-olds that work for us too. So constantly mentoring kids. And it's what I love is like watching their journey and where they've started to where they've been in the last 3 to 4 years, building houses, buying new cars, having families. That probably what gives me the most fulfillment at this point in my career.
Yeah, I would say that that's probably the biggest gift that you can give, right? Like, it's the one thing. Like, what's the one thing in life that makes you happy? The one thing in life that makes you happy is the involvement in other people's success. And with that, that passion for their success is ultimately your success. And I think I love that about pest control. I love that about the pest control industry of, the companies that are successful, man, they believe in the people that work for them. And those people are, rewarded by the effort that they put in their business, and then the effort that the everybody around you's putting in. It's a fire wheel of being involved in people's lives and really truly wanting their success.
I agree. And then another, we're both girl dads. We discussed that, discovered that early before the podcast. And my oldest is 16, just had her 16th birthday. Being in position, like I said, to get her, a new car for her birthday, and then watch her wrestle. She's a wrestler. She's a killer wrestler. She's a sophomore. She plays fifth in the state. Watching her succeed, watching her win at a young age, and helping her with that. And my younger kids are super athletes too, in gymnastics and dance. So it's just been a really fun journey on that side of the world too. So I couldn't be in a better place, honestly. Like, I feel like I'm very fortunate. Obviously, we both worked really hard, took a lot of risk. Probably some luck involved too, honestly, meeting the right people at the right times. Like, we can't control that. But like we always say, the harder we work, the luckier we got in a way too. When you put ourselves in positions to ask people for help. Like, you met this guy, James, I think he said his name, and he says, "Hey, I really want to be in your position. Like, hey, can I learn from you?" And it's simple things like that what a lot of people aren't willing to do. Like, they don't want to ask for help, or if they do ask for help, they don't have that person around them. So again, I think a lot of luck plays with us too. Like, you were born with parents who were entrepreneurs. I was born with a grandpa who was an entrepreneur. They pushed us to go do these things, and some people just didn't have that opportunity. Not that they can't make it, but I feel like I was blessed.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and ultimately, I try to be really present to the people that show up in my life, randomly. Could just be, at a restaurant. It could be, here at the office, that's, a UPS driver, just anybody who's, pay attention to people who show up, and be present to what their needs are. And sometimes you never know, man. I've got two employees that are great people that, that started with one of them that I randomly met working in a grocery store. And I'm like, hey, it's Spencer Rutledge is his name. A lot of people in the industry know him. He's at Pest World all the time. And fun fact, I literally was asking him about something at the grocery store, and I saw him again maybe 2 months later, and I thought, you know what, I like this kid. And we started talking, and he went to work for us, and same thing. He's learning every single day. We have high expectations. He's been with us for, well, like 10 years now, 8, 10 years. And in that time he got married, and now he has a baby, and, he's living his life, and he's learning how to live his movie. But that only happens if he gets out of bed. So he's got to get out of bed every day and understand the expectations, and then execute on those expectations. And yeah, so it's a great part of success, is being able to give back on that level.
I agree. So we're going to turn back a little bit to go to James' office. You get to sit with him a lot every Tuesday, learn from him, really set off your entrepreneurial journey. Where do you go from there? I know you're still young at this age, like mid-20s.
Yeah, so I mean, while I was in college, I was entrepreneur on some level. I mean, kind of classic '90s stuff. Like, me and my roommate had a DJ business. Anything we could come up with to make money, and and then I get out of college, and one of my buddies that I'm still really, really good friends with today, we talk weekly and see each other all the time. He's like, "Man, you had a really good job in college. You should get a recruiter." And which would not be, we were not, put in a situation. We didn't have an engineer. I had a marketing degree. We weren't engineers. People weren't looking for us, right? We had to figure out how to make our own destiny. And so I got a recruiter, and she says, "I got a job selling rodenticides." And I'm like, "What's a rodenticide?" And she goes, "It's rat bait." And I go, "I will never sell rat bait."
It's so crazy to me how our journey almost finds us. Like, I didn't go out searching for pest control either. Either did you.
No, I didn't. I mean, and all my friends were in healthcare. So they were all going into, like,
Yeah.
that was the job to have, right? You wanted to work
Yeah.
for Medtronic or GE or something like that. And so she tells me kind of what the package is. And it was for my age and where I was at in life, it was a great package. And then it had a cell phone, had an 8 state territory, expense account. And the icing on the cake is it had a Pontiac Bonneville.
Nice. Those
And
were the best. Those things were
Yeah,
fast too.
it was
Didn't they have
great.
like a V8 in those
A four
things?
door
Yeah.
Pontiac Bonneville, and so I said, what's the company? And she said it's Bell Labs, which obviously everybody in this podcast knows who Bell Labs is. And so I said, well, I'll interview for that job. And so I went and interviewed for the job, and I got the job. So it was to your point, somewhat luck. I did put the extra effort in to get the job, and I got the job and had a 8 state territory, phenomenal experience. And one of my buddies that was in healthcare, he said, "Hey, there's this job that I think you should apply for." Of course, now at this point, I've worked for Bose music speaker system. I've worked for Bell, both great manufacturers with great processes, and so one of my buddies knew of a job that was opening up at a company called Sage Products. And so I went and interviewed for this job. The manager, great guy, and we went through one interview, and the second interview, I remember he asked me, he goes, "Are you a team player?" And without hesitation, I just said, "Well, that depends on who's on the team." And he started laughing. He goes, "That's the best answer I've ever gotten to that question." He goes, "I think I'm going to move you to the final interview." And I ended up getting that job. And so I left Bell, and they had invented Sharps containers. A guy named Vincent Foglia had invented Sharps containers. And the early Sharps containers were basically Parmesan cheese graters, where you broke the needle off on it. And during that time that he had done that, the AIDS epidemic had really broken out, and before that, there was no real good way to get rid of these needles. And so he started that process and invented the teeter totter system that people think of today. And they had sold the business to Tyco. And kept a big chunk of it, and that left an open position in where I was living, which is basically Fort Worth. And so got the job and went and sold into hospitals. They had package bathing, they had some equipment, they had oral care products.
So you do medical sales?
Medical sales, yes. And they were an exceptional company, very exceptional what they did. So now I'm my third manufacturer that is really, really good at what they do, and learning every single day from great people in their marketing department and their manufacturing. They had a great culture and how they fostered innovation, and I learned a lot from that. And so I'm doing it for a couple years, and healthcare, especially hospital. Being in the hospital, which is what we were, it's something you either love, you're passionate about, or you're not. And I just wasn't passionate about it. And I think because I grew up in a service business, I mean, my stepdad made me get on a plumbing truck when I was in the 6th grade in the summers, and get tools and shovels, and the service industry was just kind of calling me back in some way. I don't think I knew that at the time, and so I just had this intuition that I wanted to start a company. I wanted to come back to pest control, and so I started looking for opportunities and ways to do that. And at the time, one of the AIB was really coming on strong. Not that they hadn't been, but they were really coming on strong. And their number one thing was the stations need to be easy to clean. And I'm a people person. I'm a friend person. Like if anybody who knows me knows how much I cherish my relationships, and especially when you work hard to earn those relationships and the trust that goes with that. And so I still was talking to people, and I'd stop and have lunch if I was, if I had a meeting in a hospital. Hospitals are not, you don't really have lunches in the hospital setting, right? You either eat in the cafeteria at the hospital, or you have a couple hours where you're have nothing to do, or not say nothing, but you have paperwork to do, whatever, but you're not in the hospital. And so I remember I stopped into one of my buddies that I'd made friends with at Bell, and he's sitting at his desk. I stopped into his office and just to say hi. Hey, it's good to catch up. And he was complaining about how it was hard to clean his bait station. And the light bulb went off in my head that this might be an entrepreneurial opportunity. And so that started. And I was some weeks later, I did a little bit of research, and I'm at a macaroni grill having lunch, and I take a build your own pasta piece of paper and one of their crayons, and I draw out what I deem to be as the first bait station, which is the Easy Clean, on that piece of paper. It's sitting in the front. When you walk in to the office, I still have it today. It's framed, and that was it. So then I wrote a business plan and presented it to several people, and one of them actually happened to be private equity. And the private equity guys owned an injection molding facility and plated up something for me that was very palatable. Danny Myers, I'd made really good friends with him when I was working in the territory, and I was asking for his advice on what he thought. I mean, Danny was always a savvy entrepreneur, knew the industry really well, was well known throughout the country, and so I was asking his advice on what he thought, and then I'm was asking, what do you think about this private equity? And he looked at me and he goes, I think we should do this together. And I'm like, what? And like, I really didn't think he was the one that was going to want to do it. And so I said, okay, great, let's do it. And the funny thing, I like to tell people this story. So Danny had really good advisors, great advisors, which really helped VM be successful in the beginning. But he had an attorney in a room that was his attorney, guy by the name of Ed Markey. He had his accountant, guy named Reggie Parr, great accounting firm. He had his banker, Chris Stribmatter. And we're sitting at a conference table. And all five of us are sitting there. It's me, Danny, and his three people, right? His banker, his attorney, and his accountant. All three of them are telling him not to do it. They're all three of them telling him not to do it. And I'm sitting there, I'm like raising my hand. I'm like, hey, I'm sitting right here. Like, it's like Dumb and Dumber, right? Like, hey, I'm sitting here. I'm right here. And so he's looking at them and looking at me and looking at the paperwork, and yeah, he's like, I want to do it. So he signed the paperwork, and we started, and it was a great journey. And Danny was really good at business, but I think one of the things that is that I think about most, and he unfortunately passed away 2 years ago. But when I think
Sorry to
about
hear that.
Danny, yeah, thank you, great guy. What I think about the most when I think about Danny now is just his ability to mentor and be present to people. And without him in my life, I really don't know what not just VM would have looked like, but Ethan Inc. would have looked like. So, and he grew his business, he sold it, did quite well, invested in other things after, he sold the pest control company, and very successful. And I learned a lot, but I learned more about life than I did business from him in the end. So, and that's it. We started VM, and it's been a 23-year journey of ups
Yeah,
and
talk us
downs.
through that journey. There's a lot where you like from drawing a piece of paper to your first molding. Like, talk us through, like, I want to hear all of it.
Yeah, so the thing about this business, especially on the manufacturing side, trust is very it's not easy to earn, is the best way to put it. Like on the pest control side, obviously you have to earn trust, but there's a need. Somebody had a fire ant mound, somebody had a rodent problem, hey, something needs to get fixed. You have to have good people get in front of that customer. Um, in our side, you have to, on the manufacturing side, without question, you have to get in front of the customer. But if we don't do our job, then your job is not done properly, and then that affects your relationship with your customer. So people take that, and when the pest control community, when they look at who they're buying from, trust is almost everything, right? Do you trust that they're the quality, the thought process, the science, you're checking boxes of things, delivery of product, not running out of product. There's pieces of the checklist on the pest control, the PMP side, that are absolute musts. And so when you start a manufacturing company in our business, the first 5 to 10 years, that's what you're spending most of your time doing, right? So there's examples of people knocking it out of the park with something new and unique, that is needed, that nobody could figure out how to do, or they just didn't think about. But for the most part, when you look at who most people's chemical rooms, the manufacturers in their chemical rooms, they can point to why they trust that company. And so you are building trust in the beginning, And in our case, because we had no experience in actual manufacturing, he'd go back to Danny's, accountant, attorney, and banker. They were probably right. Go back to being lucky, right? So I was lucky that I found the right guy that just wanted to be a part of it. Um, so you go figure out how to manufacture early on. It was funny. We sent some stations to the Midwest, and Jim Delaney, who was at Van Waters and Rogers, I think it was Van Waters then, or Vopak, maybe wasn't Univar, and not Viserys, and he put one of our original stations outside of his office, and I get a picture a day later emailed to me, and it's the bait station's broken like 7 or 8 pieces, right? And so we did not have a cold weather bait station. Go back to never giving up. So I'm like, okay, note to self: sell product from Southern California to Florida. Don't go north. Make sure it's always warm. So that's how we started. And I actually had a really good friend of mine, still friends today, that was on the PGA Tour, and he came out strong. Won events, was top 10 every week on Ryder Cup teams, and so my sales strategy was to follow the PGA Tour, and go out to events with people at some point during the week, sell during that week. Great guys. Caddy's a great guy. I'm still really good friends with his caddy today. He's in title business now, and Chad's on the senior tour, and they would let me stay in their house, like, because we didn't have a lot of money, and so it was sleeping on couches, doing whatever it took to get in front of a customer and sell product. And so then somewhere along the way, I really had an aha moment of, at the time everybody was buying bait stations, and they'd go to Home Depot and they'd buy a patio block, and then they would bring it back to their office, and they'd either rivet it, or I say rivet it, screw it in. They would set the block, they would screw it in, or they would do liquid nails. And I remember thinking to myself, man, if I could put those two things together and ship it, I think I'd be onto something. And so got lucky. A couple of family friends that were in different businesses. One of them was in the concrete piping business, was a VP of operations for Hanson, which is now Rinker, I think, but it's one of the largest kind of industrial pipe, concrete pipe companies in the world. And then my good buddy Kelly Stites, Greg Montier and Kelly. And Kelly owns Champion Shuffleboard and American Dynamo pool tables. And they had an opportunity to get into kind of a lay down concrete business. And so they did it. And they just literally took some land across the street from Kelly's shuffleboard plant. And they started making grade rings for parking lots. And along the way, they decided to buy a block machine. And you talk about luck. This was luck. And so they buy a block machine because they had a couple of customers, and they had another buddy that had a need for a product that a block machine would make. And I'll never forget, I was at the Texas Rangers opening day, and they walked up, and all my friends are hanging out, and there's like 15 of us, and doing what you do at an opening day, and we're cooking hamburgers and playing washers. And they walk up, we start talking, just, hey, how you doing? It's great to see you. They're older than I am, and so they weren't my normal circle, but we saw each other a fair amount. And they're like, hey, we heard you need to make a concrete block. And I'm like, yes, I do. And they said, well, you may be in luck because we just bought a block machine. What was important about that luck was two things. If you look at like your paved stones, they make more blocks than I could afford in a minute. So like, meaning I didn't have a market for it. So like, they could make 50 blocks a minute or whatever their cycle time was. Well, I had no customers. So there was no way that I was going to go buy, hundreds of thousands of dollars of blocks, then try to figure out how to go sell it. And then the other part of it is this tensile strength of the majority of that concrete is different than what I needed for our process. So by them building a concrete block and having such great experience and very durable concrete, i.e., pipes underneath the ground, grade rings, they started out and they just kind of helped me walk to it. Greg Montier, who runs that business on a daily basis and knows concrete, is he's got a really good mentorship attitude about him. So does Kelly, and they just they allowed me to be in a process of learning how to make the concrete block to attach it to a bait station and ship it. And when we finally figured it out, I can remember where I was sitting and I had the product and I'm like, wow. And it was a euphoric. It still gives me chills now thinking
It
about
just
it.
gave me the chills. It's so cool.
As it defined my future, and it defined ultimately my children's future, right? So um, the we make a pallet of product, maybe, say we make 4 or 5 pallets of 60. It was funny when we had the bait station, we had the concrete block, and the layer of 15. If you've ever bought one of our secured products or now our mosquito con product, there's 15 per layer. So sitting outside this office I'm in right now, we're actually moving to a new building in about a month, a lot more space and a lot more of technology in it for molding. But I walk outside, and my engineer at the time, his name was Larry, and we had made like 15 or 20 of these stations. So he's like, "How are you going to ship these? We putting these in a box, or what are we going to do?" And I'm like, "Man, I got no idea." So we take and we put 15 on a skid, and they fit perfect. And so I was like, well, at that time, most people bought like 8 to 10 cases on an order of rat bait stations. So we got 60 bait stations kind of as an average order. So we stacked them up times 6, and he's like, well, we're not going to make any money if we only do is send 60. So then we started stacking them up to see how high we could get them. And that's how we came up with the pallet configuration. And we started shipping them to people early on. I say people, just people to look at it, test it, and play with it. And I'd say non-pest control people. So the PMPs, 10 out of 10, this is a brilliant idea. Logistics people were like 8 out of 10, where this is a bad idea, right? I'm shipping concrete. But what it ended up being was freight, especially then, was broken down into 2 categories: nuts and bolts and pillows. And a concrete block is nuts and bolts, and a bait station is a pillow. And if you put them together, they effectively made perfect freight, at least in our format. And so when we stacked them up and put them on a truck, as it turned out, we ended up with a percentage of freight costs being less with our secured product than it was our non-secured product. And so we were able to ship it. We had some learning lessons. Some things broke along the way. Some pallets fell over. I mean, there was definitely not without failure. And then that was it. And once we started the secured category, it just changed rodent stations forever. And we stepped on the gas, and it's been a great ride ever since.
That's really cool. I know you have you have a bunch of products now, and you're moving on, like since it started with podcasts, like you've really been innovating, and it's probably hard to be innovative in this industry. How do you come up with the new products? What kind of products you have today that you're really, really excited about? I know I've seen some that are coming out that are really cool, but how do you stay on the forefront of that?
So, product innovation is about need, right? So when I was younger and I was, selling anything I was selling early on, the old adage of, hey, you can sell ice to an Eskimo. And that was said about me, several times. And, what I learned through the process of working for great companies that had valuable products is a great salesman can sell ice to an Eskimo once, maybe twice, but in the end, people don't buy what they don't need, right? So you first have to identify need, everything in innovation is about need. Market is very important. Obviously, here's something the customer needs. Is there a big enough market to actually invest in that need? And then are they willing to pay what it's going to take to be profitable for that product for the need? And so we basically, I've trained everybody at VM to understand those concepts. So as we look at innovation has to be on some level fairly rapid. You have to move pretty quick to figure out whether there's going to be an end result that is going to be beneficial for the customer and beneficial for VM. And so we always start with a need. And I think with the way that because I'm accessible, with people in the industry that know what the needs are, I tend to get phone calls. So, for example, with MosquitoCon, I got a phone call, and it was very specific, and it was like, "Hey, Ethan, I just need a water holding container receptacle that I can put an insect growth regulator in. I need it to be serviceable. I want to put my name on it." And it was actually kind of funny. This he calls me up, and it's like 6 o'clock, and he's like, "What are you doing?" It was a beautiful time of the year, and "What are you doing?" It's late fall or early fall, and I'm like, "I'm sitting on my porch." And he goes, and I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm sitting on my porch," and I'm like, "Well, is this a redneck joke or what? Like, what's up?" And so he he's like, then he tells me he needs this water holding container. And I said, "Well, let me go to the office and see what I can do." And went to the office the next day. We'd made a gopher station a long time ago. Gopher stations they're meal bait that goes in it, and they need mass. So it's like cereal, right? And then you need 3 pounds of it. It needs to go in there. So in order to do that, we're going to take our platform, and we had closed the entry holes for rodent. And we went into my engineer's office, Jay's office, and I said, "Hey, I need to turn this into a bucket." And there was a hole on top, and we had drain holes in the bottom. And he said, he goes, "Well, we don't even use that mold anymore. I can put it in the tool shop and get rid of the drain holes in the bottom. But what are you going to do about the hole on top?" And Mike Hovis, who is Where's Mikey? A lot of people seen that on social media. And Mike's kind of knows where everything's at in the office. We've saved parts for decades. And so he's always with me. And so Jay goes, "What are you gonna do about the hole?" And I go, "Mike, go to Home Depot and buy a leaf guard." So Mike goes to Home Depot, buys a leaf guard, and lo and behold, it fits perfect over the hole. And we rivet the leaf guard to it, and 4 days later, we got about 50 stations we're going to get out and ship. And this is in September of 23. And so I wanted to do it quick. Remember the speed thing, right? We're running out of time. It's getting cold. So wanted to see if there's any merit to spending money on this. And lo and behold, we got enough people playing with it that we got an immediate feedback that this probably is something that we need. And so we built the leaf guard mold, rolled it out in 24, continued to tweak it, found partnerships, found the right people to play with it, test it. And you go back to being lucky. That might have been one of the luckiest phone calls I've gotten in a long time, that I wasn't on my radar screen of, this is something that, the industry needed. And now MosquitoCon, became MosquitoCon, now MosquitoCon is becoming, a brand standard in our industry, and is being sold, from left to right in the United States, all over, and being put into programs. What we like to say is, it's mosquito your way. It's a tool that you use along with the other things that you're doing. It's great for organic growth. And everybody in our industry is looking for organic growth today. Mosquito is one of the fastest growing categories, and we just give a nice tool that use in the program that the PMP partners we have create for their customers, and it's been really good. So that's an example of how we innovate. I can keep going on and on. We have our Magnifly that we're rolling out, and that came from a Caribbean island that has some cruise ships stopping at it, and they have a migratory crab that goes from the middle of the island to the beach, lays eggs, goes back to the middle of the island and dies. It's the little red crabs that you see on social media covering the roads. Well, when they die, all the carcasses become, a fly breeding ground. And so I get this statement, "Ethan, we don't have anything to treat flies in the middle of a forest." And it just got my brain going. And a week later, 2 weeks later, my girlfriend and I are in Santa Fe, and we're riding horses, and we're at the stable, and I'm looking at these horses, and they've got, stuff over their eyes, and, the flies are awful. They're everywhere. And I remember thinking, man, there's got to be something better. We had made the FBS years and years ago. And it's a good product, our fly bait station. It's people have asked for changes. We've been busy with other things, but we dug into it, and that was September of last year. Theme here on September. And I knew that if we didn't go quickly, we wouldn't be able to order the tools and have product ready for the fly season this year, so we could get it out to people, get it into their programs. And so we did it. So we are going to be sending samples out soon, probably an email going out in the next week or two on samples of the product, and we're starting to take orders. So great. It's a great product. I'm excited about it. A lot of people very excited about it. So yeah, we just keep working on it every single day and listening to the customer. In the end, it's all about what our P&P partners need. I mean, there's no point in making something they don't need.
Yeah, I agree. And then I know you mentioned earlier too, and we were talking about Travis in the beginning about his bait station being in full color. Like, how did you guys come up with that? Where did that idea come from? It's super cool and very innovative itself.
Yeah, so we've not had a colored private label. We've always had it in plastic. There's been a need for it. We've worked on several different options of ways to do it. Kind of go back to what we talked about early on in this conversation of working. So in the summers when I was at my dad's house, he lived in Sedona, Arizona,
I
and
love Sedona.
yeah, it's a great spot. And he lived there OG, like when it was still all cowboy and there was country bars, and now it's completely different. But he was working for a guy that was working on end mold graphics, and it started with rotational end mold graphics for surfboards. And so we went. I was in this. His guy's name was Scott Stevenson. Invented this end mold graphic process, and my dad was doing work for him. So I was in and around what he was doing. I remember he was mad scientist, and he had this rotational molding machine, and he was trying to mold the graphics into things like surfboards and kayaks, things that you didn't want the graphics to scratch. And he was has been extremely successful with it, and I never forgot it. So when we wanted to do color years ago, like we tried to do it, we didn't have the horsepower at the time to do it, and so then we looked at doing screen printing. We looked at actually lasering it into the plastic. And we let it go. It just sat on the shelf. Like if anybody ever does a plant tour, we have this wall of ideas that we've put on the shelf that we just haven't finished. There's some great stuff out there that at some point we'll probably, make one of these products or a dozen of these products that we started with that we just didn't finish. And so this was one of those things. And we had some customers in the Pacific Northwest that just had to have it because of the documentation requirements at the state level of active ingredients, et cetera. And I just said, okay, we have to figure this out. And so I got on the trusted Google, and I started Googling. And so the end mold graphics is for rotational molding, not so much injection molding. And so I had to find one for injection molding. And so I found somebody to do it that was a company. And most of those companies, they're not looking for one-offs, right? They don't want a couple thousand here, 5,000 here, 10,000 there. They make, they book out for Maytag the instructions on the washing machine, 1 million of them, and they book them out a year in advance. They run them, et cetera. Like that. Think about that's where most of that product's going. And so we had to work with them for them to understand the opportunity, had to fit it into our business model, but most importantly, we had to get it into the mold. And that is the most important part of the end mold labels. So what we're doing, the technical name for it's in plastic label, because we take a full color label, and it looks a little bit like a punch card, the old school punch cards in rodent stations, but it's clear, and it has your label on it, or clear. It's a card that you can put. In the case of Travis, he's got the full blue on there, in Nice Pest Control, and so. But the difficult part is you have to then put that in a robotic automation that will put it in a place where the robot can pick it up and then put it into the mold, and then it actually molds, the plastic molds over the label. So it's molded into the label. It will be there forever. So it's something that you get a couple really great pieces out of it. One is you get your label, or excuse me, your logo your way, right? Whatever your brand is, that's your brand standards. It's going in the private label. And then if you have defined information that's important to you that you don't want to be putting labels, stickers, that are peeling off, coming off, weather, humidity, etc., it won't, because it's in the plastic. You can scratch it with a knife, but to get it off, you actually have to cut it out. Like, you can't get it off without cutting it out of the plastic. So we worked on it for some time, worked on the process. And it's funny because Jay, my engineer, he's got a big whiteboard, and it's got like a stick figure, putting the label in there. And there's automation. The label gets taken inside the cage, and then the end of arm picks it up and puts it on, puts it in the mold. And like, we really struggled early on working with automation companies, because they were really built for, again, Maytag, built for people who were doing very, very large projects, and it wasn't very specific to what we were doing. So I give credit to Jay and the effort that he put into finding something that worked in our operation, and we've done that, and it's been very successful very quickly. So just another piece that we're working on.
Yeah, awesome. Congratulations. A couple of selfish questions for myself. You run a very successful company. It's big, lots of volume, lots of revenue. What does your day-to-day look like? I know you're a super busy guy, so what does that look like?
So I wake up, go to the gym, and then come back to the house. I get to the office, and my normal kind of thought process is pace. So like, what's the pace of what we're doing? Like, whether that's orders, customers, business. If I know certain customers have initiatives, then I'm always looking at, are we doing what we need to do to make sure their initiatives are taken care of as it pertains to VM products, from an innovation perspective, because we always have things going on. You're looking at where are we at today, like if there's somebody testing the product, where has that testing gotten to? If we're building a tool, if it's a molded product, we're building a tool. What's the progress of the tool? Airzonics was a really hard product to make. The oils and the plastics, and so it's following the steps. I mean, ultimately, innovation in its most simplistic form is building a house, right? So if you've ever seen a house being built, some get built really well in a timely manner, and some take forever to build. And the ones that get built in a timely manner and built well, everybody on the job site is doing what they need to do in a timely manner, understanding that if you don't get something done on Friday and Monday's a holiday, you've lost a lot of time. And so most of what I'm doing is time management, working with my team. I have a great team from top to bottom, working with my team on expectations, of, whether it's 3D rendering for advertising, whether it's, some advice of standard operating procedures, like for the Magnify or for MosquitoCon. Like, what if people are asking us questions? If that's not for us to answer, then, who are we going to help them reach out to answer those questions, finding that information. We pride ourselves in service. So if I could say what most of my day is pace, understanding what's going on, understanding what the need is, and making sure we're executing on that. And then we also have the day-to-day travel activity, doing shows, events, Legislative Day, Pest World, customer events. That for me is not quite as busy as it used to be, but that's still 2-3 weeks a year. I'm probably going, or a year, 2-3 weeks a month. I am going somewhere to try to accomplish something with a customer, or at some event. So, and then you get done with that and go for a walk, have dinner, start over, try to have fun on the weekends, play some golf with some old friends, and yeah, so that's what it looks like.
That's cool. And then you're, again, really large company, and most of the time they're usually not founder led still. You usually got swallowed up by PE along the way. I'm sure you've got hit up by PE a lot. How were you able to stay away from PE? And what's the future like for VM?
Yeah, so the easiest way for me to answer that is, I mean, obviously PE, people ask to buy VM products, strong brand, strong portfolio. But the easiest way for me to answer that is I get asked twice a month, if not once a week, Ethan, how do you sleep at night? Because my brain is always moving. I'm always working on this project and that project. And so the easy answer for me is I have to have something to do. And I've been financially successful. I have what I want. I definitely like what I like, but I'm not a consumption person. Consumption consumes you basically, and for me, consumption is not. When I say consumption, I don't need more necessarily than what I have today, right? Like, so it's for me, my win and my success is growth of the business. It's the people in the business. It is taking care of the customers. And I have to have a place to go. My grandfather, my mom's dad, retired from Mexico State in 1984. He had a robust consulting business that was for range and land management that he consulted with countries all over the world. And the university found value in that, and they gave him a very nice office with staff, and he continued to do that till the early 2000s. And he did not die. I think he died in 2006, 2008. And he literally worked until he couldn't work anymore and went into an assisted living. And that was only because he was in World War II. He flew an Avenger, a bomber for the Navy, and he fought the Germans and the Japanese. And so he'd flown missions in both theaters of war, and there's a lot of stress on your body landing those airplanes, and he had Parkinson's. But he was completely mentally acute at 92. His body just stopped working, and he went to the office until he was 90 years old. And I think about me,
Kelly
and I'm
Munger
like,
plan, right? Yeah.
right. It's for me, that's my plan. So I don't see a scenario where I feel good about um, selling VM relative to the fact I love what I'm doing. My children love the company. My employees love the company. I feel like we're just getting started, and I feel like I'm just getting started. So after 23 years, wow, it took all this time. So
That's amazing. You brought up Pest World, so I'll just mention that. I know your VM is one of our main sponsors for the Real Pest World House, so it's really, really cool. Thank you for that. And then I
yeah,
heard some talks about maybe some food truck concept. Where did that come from?
we have to get it done. There's no guarantee we're gonna get it done. Let's be
Right.
clear. So on the food truck, I was at Bug Bucks, which was a great event. I really enjoyed it.
Shout
We'll
out
be there in
Alan.
San Diego
Yeah.
with Alan. We'll be in San Diego next year. Excited to do that again. But as one of the speakers, Tyler with Nice, it turns out he has been friends with Diesel Dave since college. They hiked Europe together, or backpacked Europe together, and so when we got done with dinner the first night at Bug Bucks, we went and hung out for a little while afterwards, and I started talking to Diesel Dave. And if anybody's ever talked to Diesel Dave, he's maybe we were just brothers from day one, or he's the easiest guy in the world to talk to, maybe a little bit of both. But we hit it off, and we just started talking about what he's passionate about, the business that they have, building, really unique vehicles. I think they just did a Zamboni for the hockey team in Utah. And so it was really, really cool. He showed me pictures of that. And we've been actually looking for doing something with a food truck, because I hired Richard Cruz about 7, 8 months ago. And Richard came to us, been in the business his entire life. His mom was actually an inside sales rep for Vopak, Univar, et cetera, way back in the day. So he's a pest control guy through and through, but he's also big into barbecue. And so he has actually been to Kansas City the last 3 years, and that's the best 750 in the world. And I think he placed top 50 last year. And so we got a VM sales and technical guy that is a phenomenal barbecue guy. Like, we got to leverage that, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
Richard and I have been going through, looking at different options, and in the world that we live in, the certified education units and consistent shows year in year out, there are opportunities obviously to be at a show and have some connectivity to the customer, give some value to the customer, have fun with the customer. And there's Nices has done it for a long time. Harry's been really successful with that, and we don't want to steal Harry's thunder or Nice's thunder. We wanted to have our own kind of version of it. And so I was just talking to Diesel Dave, and I'm like, hey, could we build like a food truck, or what would that look like? And so the conversations happened. We would love to do it. We're working through what that looks like. We don't know that we can have it done by October, because they're quite busy. The Diesel brothers, and obviously they built an empire on the things that they bring to market and the value they give to their customers. And so I hope we can pull it off. Certainly enjoyed Diesel Dave, and I'd love to work with him more, and his team. And so we'll see. Let's keep our fingers crossed that we've got something
sure.
for the Real Pest World House. And we are sponsoring the first night dinner. It is here in Dallas, so we're giving it a real honky tonk theme. So for the people who sign up and come, you're guaranteed to have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, I'm super excited and thankful for you guys doing that. So thank you. Last question I have for you, because we're running out of time. We're at an hour right now. This point of your career, what are you most proud of?
My kids.
Same. Pretty easy answer. You didn't even blink.
Yeah, no, it's my children, without question.
Yeah, mine too.
I mean, I'm very proud of the company, but I mean, ultimately going back to, what we were talking about earlier about mentorship, and I when I did my first trust, I remember I was sitting with my trust attorney, state attorney, and we got done. And I said, now what? And he said, well, you keep, a copy in your safety deposit box. I keep a copy. And I'm like, well, you don't give this to like the trust department? Or is there like the trust gods out there or something that you give all these documents to? And he looked at me and he goes, no. And I go, well, who made those rules? And without hesitation, he looked at me and he said, the Magna Carta. And I'm like, oh, okay, right? Like, but the point of that is that, the progression of, time is how we get to where we're at, and learning from our mistakes, and being present to how to be better. And I think the biggest gift you can give your children is, and that your most important role as a parent is to understand teaching them the time that it took for us to get here, and what it's going to take for them to create their lives, and how are they going to add value back to all of these people that have, in the United States fought for our freedom, from, going back to Europe, and, creating standards and courts, and like there's this history that we don't, think about and talk about in our daily activity, but that's how we got here. And so for me, that's just the most important part. And along the way, it's been very joyful that my kids are funny, and they're engaged, and they love life, and they're I can't wait to see what they do in their life. And my both of them are interested in the business. My oldest is very interested. She's been to legislative day the last 2 years, and so she calls me every single day after school to ask me what's going on at VM today. So
I love
my
that.
kids, the people that work for us at VM, really proud of my staff at VM. We have phenomenal people. Donnery, who everybody, in this industry knows Donnery, and she's been with me now for almost 20 years. But I go down the list of, the entire team, and proud to have them on the team, grateful for them showing up and putting 110% every single day.
Awesome. Well, that's pretty much, I'm over my time, but I just want to say thank you again. You're very influential to a lot of people. What you're doing for VM, you're very influential to the whole pest control industry. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing the last hour with me. And hopefully I get to meet you in person and at the Real Pest World House. So I look forward to
Yeah,
meeting
we'll
you.
make that happen for sure. So I
Absolutely.
can't wait. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the time. And again, I do look forward to seeing you soon, and have a great year.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye. Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode of Pest Control Millionaire. We don't charge any money for the show, but the podcast isn't free. Please like and subscribe and give us a 5-star review in your favorite podcast app. This makes a huge difference for us. If you have any specific questions about your business or your personal life that you'd like answered by me or any of my podcast guests, please send an email to info@pestcontrolmillionaire.com. And if you want to get in touch with me about our marketing class, we do a live version every Thursday night. Check out our website at pestcontrolmillionaires.com. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you guys in the next one.